Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the St. Tammany Parish Planning Meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Casabon? Here. Mr. Lauren? Here. Mr. Hines? Mr. Richard? Here. Mr. Willie?
Here.
Mr. Matthews?
Here.
Mr. Davis?
Here.
Mr. Manella?
Here.
Mr. Mackey?
Yeah.
Mr. Doherty?
Here.
And Mr. Randolph? Chairman, you have-
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting. I'd like to introduce you to our newest member, Mr. Ron Randolph. He's officially sworn in, so he can be sworn at now. So, I mean, you know, he's joined the ranks with the rest of us. Please turn your phones and pagers either to silent or off. If you have an appeal, if you disagree with any of the decisions this commission makes, there are appeal cards over here to my right on the end of the rail. Speaker cards are also over there. If you wish to speak on any of the cases, please complete one of the speaker cards. That way we have a record of your name and address in case there's an appeal or something that we need to notify you. Public speaking, each side will have 10 minutes with a 5-minute rebuttal. If there is any discussion after we take a vote on an item, please exit the building, not just go out into the lobby area because it still echoes back into here. Ms. Casabon, will you lead us in invocation? Amen. Mr. Davis?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Keller, we have, next item is the approval of the minutes. As all the commissioners had an opportunity to review the minutes, any corrections need to be made? I'll accept the vote to approve the minutes.
I make the motion.
Excuse me. Motion by Mr. Mackey, second by Mr. Davis. Please vote. Motion carries. Public hearings, consent calendar, performance obligations, and entering parish rights-of-way. Any items not pulled from the consent calendar are automatically dispensed by vote as approved and/or as staff comments. Items pulled from the consent calendar shall be discussed and voted on individually. Mr. Keller, you have any that need to be pulled?
No, sir.
Okay, commission members, Mr. Matthews.
Make it simpler. I'd like to pull all with the exception of Lakeshore Estates and the 2 minor subdivisions.
Pull all of them, you said?
Find Lakeshore Estates. Okay. All right. So all of the performance obligations, I got to read all those, right? This morning? Okay. The first one is Money Hill Phase 2A and 2B subdivision, water, Ward 6, District 6. The amount is $30,000. Expires December 3rd, 2012. Money Hill Phase 2A and 2B subdivision sewer, Ward 6, District 6. Amount $100,000. Abita Terrace subdivision, Walnut and First, Ward 4, District 7. Amount is $26,000. Expires December the 12th, 2012. Entering the parish right-of-way, Oshner Boulevard, Ward 1, District 1. Amount $5,000. Expires December the 18th. Let's see. And entering parish right-of-way, I-12 Service Road Extension, Ward 3, District 5. Amount is $39,600. Expires January the 9th, 2013. And entering parish right-of-way, East Coop Drive, sewer and water lines, Ward 3, District 5. Amount $27,000, expires January the 2nd, 2012. And you said the minor subdivision you're not pulling, right, Bill?
That's correct.
Okay, I'll accept a motion to approve the items not pulled.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Matthews, seconded by Mr. Willie. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. All right. First one is Money Hill Phase 2A and 2B Subdivision Water, Ward 6, District 6, amounts $30,000, expires December 3rd, 2012. The debtor is Money Hill Plantation Limited Partnership. Council District, Honorable Richard Tanner. Staff, do you have any comments?
The above referenced performance obligation expires December 8, 2012, and is scheduled for review by the Planning Commission at the November 13, 2012 hearing. Please see the attached memorandum from the Department of Environmental Services dated October 31, 2012. The performance obligation was established by the Planning Commission on December 8, 1999, and has been extended for 6-month increments since that date. Since this performance obligation was originally established by the Department of Environmental Services and said department is recommending that it be released for reasons stated, it is recommended that the performance obligation be released.
Are they here?
Thank you. Is anyone here from Money Hill, representing Money Hill? All right, this needs to be extended,
No,
No.
Chairman?
Uh,
Mr.
be
Chairman?
released, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
be released. It's been going on 13 years. So,
Okay, Mr. Matthews?
Well, I pulled
here's
this
the man that
because it
knows
does,
about it right over here, Mr. McHugh. You have any input?
Mr. Chairman, I pulled it because in fact, it does need to, it is a performance obligation that needs to be released, and I just feel like we ought to not just cavalierly do that. I think we need to release this as a separate vote of the commission, and I would move that we move to release the performance obligation concerning the water.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we
Yeah,
have a
I'll go
second?
ahead and second it then.
We have several seconds.
Whatever.
Short, I believe, is the one I actually saw first. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is Money Hill Phase 2A and 2B Subdivision Sewer, Ward 6, District 6. The amount is $100,000. Expires December 3rd, 2012. The debtor is Money Hill Plantation Limited Partnership. Honorable Richard Tanner, Council District. Staff?
The above referenced performance obligation expires December 8, 2012, and is scheduled for review by the Planning Commission at the November 13, 2012 meeting. The work covered by this obligation has not been accomplished. However, please see the attached letter from the developer dated October 15, 2012, explaining action to be taken. The performance obligation was established by the Planning Commission on December 8, 1999, and has been extended for 6-month increments since that date. The developer has been notified by the Department of Engineering on September 18, 2012, to submit a letter explaining in detail why an extension of time is needed for this obligation. Therefore, it is recommended that the performance obligation be extended for a period of 6 months or until work is satisfactorily accomplished.
Thank you. Mr. Mackey?
Again,
Go ahead and let him go.
I pulled it, asked to pull this. It appears that they have not upgraded their sewer system. I have a question for staff. With 165 homes on this site, are they going to be required to upgrade their sewer system?
May I say something? I think I'd like Mr. McHugh to come to the microphone because he's on top of it.
Okay.
Sorry about that, but
That's okay. I operate the sewer and water system at Money Hill. Mimi Dossett's family are the developers of Money Hill, so that's why this is their bond, and it's kind of my business because I run the sale. The sewer plant is at capacity. The sewer plant is operating and meeting all its permit limits. Mimi is in plans of expanding now, and we've been in discussion with Mimi for the last 6 or 8 months about it. So she's ongoing, doing what she has to do is improve the plant. So the plant will need to be expanded. I can't say today, tomorrow, but it needs to be expanded, and she's doing it. Now, there are not a lot of connections at Money Hill. It's not like they do, 15 homes a month, and it's getting capacity. It's a gradually increase. So the plant's doing fine, but she has plans to do that.
Okay, so that we have no current plans to increase the storage capacity. It is
She
to be done
was-
sometime in the future?
No, I would think it's going to be within the next year. She's already out seeking proposals to increase the capacity of the plant.
Okay?
Okay, I do know that. I'm not her engineer, okay?
No, I just
I'm speaking
wasn't
as the
sure
operator of the
exactly.
utility company, but I do know that that is in the works.
But we are currently at capacity.
Yeah, we're at capacity.
Okay, so within the next year.
It will need to be,
It will be.
I would think so, yeah.
Move to extend then.
My understanding, Kelly, we still have a skosh available. You
Yeah.
know, a couple
Oh, no,
of
it's
few
doing
houses.
fine. I mean, the plant's doing fine. So, no, I mean, like I said, when you say a year, it really tell me how many, if you put, I can't put 100 more homes on it. You're not gonna put,
Right.
a number less than that. So I'm saying, because we're operating, we're taking tests every month, and the plant's operating fine. So,
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Casabon?
environmental services. But anyway, that's something that y'all check, you do not get permits, per house.
We checked that.
You know that they're at capacity, and that, in other words, you can't continue to put houses in there unless they get permitted.
Well, they've,
let me say this, we're at or near capacity. I can't say the plant is overloaded, or that, you give me the number, because you take a monthly reading of the recording, and so we're at or near capacity. And again, I would say 30, 40 homes, I just don't, I'm looking at the plant and saying it's doing fine, so I'm not gonna tell you the number's 12, or the number's 200. But she's been working on this problem, and we've been working with her, and the plant's operating fine, so.
But what I was just asking was that if there is a protection there with our staff, that we
There
cannot
is.
continue to put homes in unless that they're at capacity, that how many homes, or if they're permitted and stuff, is that correct?
that's something that we look at. We look at how many lots they've been approved for and what the capacity of
Right.
the system is.
So we are aware that they're at capacity, and if she puts in, up to 20 new homes, that we wouldn't permit them, is what I'm saying, get a building permit if,
They might be able to build out new houses
But how
on lots
many?
that have been approved already, but we've looked at the subdivisions when they came through and they got approved for these lots because there was capacity there.
okay. But he's saying that that the system is at capacity.
He was saying it's at or near capacity, so when they go through for these approvals for different subdivision phases, we look at how many lots total is on the system, and if it's over that, then we wouldn't recommend to approve it.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else? Mr. Davis?
I'll second the motion by Mr. Matthews to extend the obligation to 6 months.
Okay, Mr. Mackey?
No, it's all been done.
Okay. So you're ready to vote, please vote. Motion carries, thank you. Abita Terrace subdivision, Walnut and First Street, Ward 4, District 7, amount $26,000, expires December 12th, 2012. Honorable Jake Groby's district, debtors Hallmark Homes. Staff?
The above referenced performance obligation expires December 12th, 2012, and is scheduled for review by the Planning Commission at the November 13th, 2012 meeting. The work covered by this obligation has not been accomplished. The following uncompleted items exist. Street name signs are needed, stop and speed limit signs are needed in accordance with the approved preliminary plan. Blue reflector is needed. Remove all debris and trash from the Parish right-of-way. Revise as-built drawing to show individual lot drainage on lots 67 through 74. Since lots 67 through 73 have a 5-foot drainage easement at the rear, and lots 72 and 73 have a 2.5 drainage easement between the lots, and since the re-subdivision plat does not indicate these servitudes, it will be necessary that an act of correction be confected to indicate these additions to the plat. The performance obligation was established by the Planning Commission on July 13th, 2004, and has been extended for 6-month increments since that date. The developer petitioner will be advised he will be required to conform with all current ordinances when applicable as a condition of this extension. The petitioner has been notified by the Department of Engineering on September 18, 2012, to explain in a letter detailing the reason for the proposed extension or appear at the November 13, 2012 meeting with an explanation. No letter's been received. Therefore, it is recommended that the performance obligation be extended for a period of 6 months or until said work is satisfactorily completed.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Matthews.
Well, this is one of those cases, this has been going on for 8 years. There are several significant items left undone. We sent a letter. We're not even graced with a reply. Again, I know we can't conveniently pull the bond, but, you know, something's got to be done with people like this. They don't even grace us with a reply. Continually, 6 months, 6 months, 6 months, doesn't seem to be getting any place. I don't know what we can do, but something needs to be done to get these things completed, or at least a reason why they haven't been completed. There may be a good reason. I think they need to at least tell us that. I, for one, am exasperated with this type of
Thank you. Mr. Davis, I think you, did you not turn your light on? No. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyone else on the commission wish to comment? The only thing that we can do at this time is extend it and, like Mr. Matthews was saying, request that they again come appear before us, or at least send a letter explaining why these major items have not been completed. Ron, is that something that you can try and do?
I think Paul can.
Paul? Okay.
But we have already sent a letter on September the 18th.
Right, I'm aware of that.
Terry, is there any legal things that we can do?
Well, I would suggest, did we include the issuer of the letter of credit? Who is that? Do you know, Paul?
The debtor's Hallmark Homes.
Hallmark Homes? And there's no bond, actual bond up?
There has to be.
Yeah, that we need to notify the issuer of the bond in addition to the developer, and request their presence at the meeting next month. And we've had a meeting to address this type of issue coming up in the future, and I think we're gonna suggest some changes, but right now, I think that's all we can do, and extend it for 6 months, but ask them to be present next month, both parties, to give an explanation.
Paul, did you get all that down? Okay. Mr. Matthews.
Can we make a motion to postpone this?
No.
No.
What will that do to the timing?
It'll expire.
It'll
on
expire
the 12th
before then?
of December.
Okay. Can't do that.
We need a motion to extend. Okay. Motion by Mr. Richard to extend. Do I need a second? I need a second. Seconded by Mr. Willie. Please vote. Needs some more votes, folks. All right, motion carries. Next item, entering parish right-of-way, Oshner Boulevard, Ward 1, District 1, amount $5,000, expires December 18th, 2012. The debtor's WBB Realty LLC. Council district is Honorable Marty Dean. Staff?
The above referenced performance obligation expires December 18th, 2012, and is scheduled for review by the Planning Commission at the November 13, 2012 meeting. The work covered by this obligation has been accomplished. The roadway ramp into Maison du Lac at North Kenich Delac has been constructed. The performance obligation was established by the Planning Commission on May 8th, 2012. However, the resolution does not expire until May 8th, 2014. The petitioner has been notified by the Department of Engineering on September 18th, 2012 to explain a letter detailing the reason for the proposed extension or appear at the November 13, 2012 meeting with an explanation. However, this action is not necessary since the work has been accomplished. Therefore, it is recommended that the performance obligation be released and a warranty obligation be established in the amount of $1,000 for a period of 5 years.
Thank you. Commissioners, Mr. Matthews?
It appears that all the work has been done on this one, and we probably ought to be releasing the performance bond. It is just my feelings that something as important as releasing the performance bond and a warranty obligation established is something that we ought to vote on individually. And I move to release the performance obligation and establish a warranty obligation in the amount of $1,000, if that's correct, for a period of 5 years.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Mr. Davis. Any other discussion? Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is entering parish right-of-way, I-12 Service Road Extension, Ward 3, District 5. Amount is $39,600. Expires January 9th, 2013. The debtor is Marina Development LLC. Parish Council District Representative Honorable Marty Dean. Staff?
The above referenced performance obligation expires January 9th, 2013, and is scheduled for review by the Planning Commission at the November 13, 2012 meeting. The work covered by the performance obligation has not been accomplished. Therefore, it is recommended that the performance obligation in the amount of $39,600 not be released at this time and to be reviewed at the December 11, 2012 meeting along with a detailed explanation for the extension.
Thank you. Commissioners, Mr. Matthews?
This says the work covered has not been accomplished. I would like to know what work is left undone. And have we asked them why? I believe we sent them a letter and have had no response. Staff, can you tell me what work? I see a letter of April 13th, 2007, but I'm not sure that that's the sum total. Can you tell me what work needs yet to be accomplished?
I believe it's items 1 and 2. Calls for a temporary turnaround and a no outlet sign. Or a temporary turnaround be made into a permanent cul-de-sac or have a connecting public road access.
Okay, if these are the only two things, one of which is, I think they need to make the cul-de-sac permanent as a temporary turnaround, fairly significant. Again, they don't even grace us with a reply. We keep extending these things. We need to send a letter to them again, and I guess they're the bonding company.
Okay, so you make a motion to approve?
Make a motion reluctantly to extend 6
right,
months.
I'm sorry. Mr. Davis?
One question for Paul. When you send the letters out, do you get some sort of an acknowledgement receipt back saying it was accepted or it was actually picked up by the party? I mean, just in case for some reason the mail's lost or, you know, we're kind of getting down on things that they haven't even received this letter from us.
Let me find out for you. I'm not the one that sends the letter.
I'd make a recommendation, any letter from now on that we have to send out from this commission, have some sort of delivery receipt back to saying at least they've received it. Thank you. And I'll second the motion by Mr. Matthews.
Okay, motion and a second. Todd, you have?
I just have a comment. These are, the next two items, this one and the next one are 60-day notice, no action required. Is that correct? And at the same time, I do see where staff has written the letters that we'd requested of them right of last meeting and the prior meeting. I'm just trying to understand, where are we deficient? I mean, is this something we'd be voting on at this point in time?
This is just a 60-day notice, and as the agenda reflects, no action is needed at this time, but it will come up at the December meeting. And at the December meeting is where you would take action to extend it for 6 months, hopefully by notifying the developer and whoever issued the bond or the letter of credit, we'll get some response back to give a reason why the work has not been completed.
I realize that, but at this point in time, it doesn't appear that they're deficient, that they have opportunity yet to respond. Okay.
Okay, so we don't need a motion or anything? You don't need a motion. Mr. Matthews, you withdraw your motion? You don't want to extend it until you have to.
Right, I'll withdraw my motion then.
Mr. Davis, I think you had the second?
That's fine, I'll withdraw the second.
Okay, thank you. Next item is entering parish right-of-way, East Coop Drive, sewage and water lines, Ward 3, District 5. Amount is $27,000, expires January 2nd, 2012. Should be 2013, right? Okay. Debtors in 59 Ventures LLC, Parish Council, District Representative is Honorable Marty Gould. Staff?
The above referenced performance obligation expires January 2nd, 2013, and is scheduled for review by the Planning Commission at the November 13, 2012 meeting. The work covered by the performance obligation has not been accomplished. Attached is a copy of the 90-day notice to the developer from the Department of Finance. Therefore, it is recommended that the performance obligation amount of $27,000 not be released at this time and to be reviewed at the December 11, 2012 meeting along with a detailed explanation for the extension.
Okay, thank you. Got any comment from the commissioners? Mr. Matthews?
Yes, I think something as important as granting the right to enter parish property and use parish property is something that we ought to have a separate and distinct vote. Everyone ought to chime in on this, and I would move to grant it, but I, again, think it's something that needs a separate vote.
But this is a 60-day notice, Bill. Okay.
Are we not moving to grant the right-of-way? Isn't that what we're doing here?
That's
Or
already
am I-
been done. This is a 60-day notice as far as the work being completed. They're actively doing the work now. I saw them this morning.
Then the form we have here about granting the right-of-way, what is that?
Yeah, that was done earlier this year. Yeah, it's just a performance obligation for what was already granted earlier.
I didn't get that at all from what we have here.
No action is required at this time. It will come back up on our agenda next month, though. All right, entering parish,
I'm sorry, it's a performance obligation that's on East Coop Drive, which we entered the right-of-way for. That's what it's about. It's about entering the right-of-way of Coop Drive, and performance is on Coop Drive, and they're performing the work at this time.
Like as we speak.
Yeah.
This morning they've all been open.
okay. Next item is entering parish right-of-way servitudes and easements. No, never mind. We've already done that. That's on the consent calendar. Petitions and requests, we don't have any. Entering the Tammany trace, none. Revocation and closing. Revocation 12-11-005, revocation of a portion of Emerald Forest Boulevard, Ward 3, District 2. Applicant, the Garden Walk LLC, surveyors Kelly McHugh and Associates. Parish Council District is Honorable Dennis Sharp. Staff?
Mr. Dougherty, excuse me, I think Bill pulled the minor subdivisions too. and they were- Oh, you
No,
did
he
not?
did not
Oh, I'm
pull
sorry, I
those.
thought you did.
No.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
My fault,
Yeah.
thank you.
Keep me straight. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This proposal, the applicant owns property you see a copy of the survey attached, which is actually the property to the north of this proposed right-of-way to be revoked is a garden Garden Walk subdivision, which they are in the process of getting reviewed by the parish at this point in time. Now, the applicant owns a property to the north of the proposed strip of land to be revoked and plans on developing a residential single-family plan unit development. The applicant wants to incorporate said strip of land into the development for recreation/green space purposes. The strip of land in question is currently owned by St. Tammany Parish, based upon a review of all the relevant parish departments, has no intended use by the parish. Therefore, the staff believes that the proposal is consistent relative to the Louisiana Revised Statutes governing the revocation of removable property, since the right-of-way does not appear to serve any public use or benefit other than to the applicant. Therefore, the staff has no objection to the proposed revocation request.
Thank you. Mr. Morone.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, Paul Marone on behalf of the Garden Walk LLC. This is the strip of land we talked about last week during the zoning meeting, that in fact you zoned and you amended the PUD to include this parcel. This is the next step in that process, and we would respectfully request your approval of the revocation so that we can continue to move forward to assimilate it into the project. Be happy to answer any questions that any of the commissioners may have.
Mr. Matthews.
Just have one question. I think this is good, and I would move to approve this, but are we required in any way to offer a portion of this to the adjoining landowners?
Well, I think the adjoining landowner is the actual right-of-way itself. This is just a portion of that right-of-way, correct, Paul?
That's correct.
The southern end of this is going to be the continuation and extension of Emerald Forest Boulevard, so the parish owns that too.
Section 15 and Section 10 are both owned. Principally, I guess Section 15 would be the really most adjacent. It's contiguous.
Yep. Yeah, we don't contact or we don't deal with those people that own it at a point in a corner. It's basically the people that are to the north or south or east or the west, depending on the orientation of the roadway that's being revoked.
Okay, but Section 15, is that also owned by Emerald Forest?
I'd need to look at the plat to be
Yeah.
certain.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's still part of the parish right-of-way, but they're not revoking that portion because it's not in part of their development.
That's correct. My client owns Section 11, just to the north of this. We do not own Section 15, but the portion in Section 15 will still remain part of the public right-of-way.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Second? Please vote. Motion carries. RS 12-11-082, the Village of Normandy Oaks, Phase 1, Lot 1A, a portion of green space into Lot 1AB, Ward 1, District 1, petitioner Allstate Financial Company, surveyor John E. Bono and Associates, owners Allstate Financial Company, Parish Council District Representatives, Honorable Marty Dean. Staff?
Hi, Mr. Chairman. The owner of Lot 1A, whom is also the developer of the Village of Normandy Oaks subdivision, wishes to incorporate a small 18-foot wide strip of green space located along the northern boundary line of said lot. Staff feels that said strip of green space is inconsequential since this phase of the development has more than adequate green space when counting the pond area and the fact that the future phases will incorporate additional green space and recreational areas that should exceed parish code. Therefore, for the reasons stated above, the staff has no objections to the proposed re-subdivision request, thereby incorporating the green space into said Lot 1A.
Thank you. Commission? Mr. Mackey.
It looks okay to me. I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Mackey to approve, seconded by Pug. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion carries. Tentative subdivision review, SD 12-11-006, Freakstone Oaks, Ward 1, District 3, developer owner Freakstone Oaks Development LLC, engineer is Scalfano Engineering, Parish Council District Representative is Honorable James Red Thompson. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a proposed plan unit development consisting of 116.7 acres and 150 lots. Typical lot size in the subdivision will be 60 by 120. The proposed development has jurisdictional wetlands, therefore the developer should be required to submit a copy of an approved Army Corps of Engineers permit to the Department of Engineering, if applicable, prior to receiving a work order in conjunction with the preliminary subdivision review process. Comment number 2, Parish Code requires a land clearing permit be applied for and obtained through the Department of Development prior to the developer receiving a work order in conjunction with the preliminary subdivision review process. Comment 3, the developer is not providing any active amenities or any amenities for that matter in Phase 1. It is imperative within a plan unit development that amenities be provided for the residents in the first phase in the event that the development stagnates and or does not move forward. Therefore, the staff recommends that either the active recreation proposed in Phase 4, comprised of a walking path and baseball and soccer fields, be constructed as part of Phase 1, or the developer to provide a park or playground and walking path within said phase. Comment 4, a preliminary draft copy of the Declaration of Covenants and Restrictions should be remitted to the department for review prior to the developer receiving a work order in conjunction with the preliminary subdivision reviews process. Comment 5, the developer has depicted green space and amenities within the development pursuant to Parish Code requirements. Therefore, the developer should be prepared to present a recreational development plan for staff review and approval prior to the developer receiving a work order in conjunction with the preliminary subdivision review process. The staff recommends approval, subject to the developer complying with all staff comments. Engineering has some comments.
Cut and fill calculations must be submitted based on the 100-year flood elevation or adjacent provided by the 2008 revised preliminary D firm when submitting for preliminary approval. The finished floor elevation restrictive covenant must include a stipulation requiring 1 foot above the crown of the road, as well as meeting the elevation of the adjacent 100-year flood elevation provided in the 2008 revised preliminary D firm renewer. Off-site drainage must be calculated when submitting for preliminary approval. All off-site water must be passed through the subdivision in a 100-year storm event. The signature line parish engineer must be changed to Director of Department of Engineering. The traffic impact analysis for this development was received. There are several comments on the TIA that will need to be addressed by the consultant. The comments have been sent to the consultant, and a revised study will need to be provided prior to the applicant's next appearance in front of the commission. Until such time that the revised study is received, it is not known what traffic mitigation measures will be required, if any. Any turn lanes that are required as a result of the revised TIA shall conform to DOTD standards and requirements, including but not limited to required storage links. The cost of these turn lanes, including any right-of-way costs, is sole responsibility of the developer and will be in addition to any mandatory impact fees that are assessed. A DOTD driveway permit will also be required. Need stormwater site plan, including BMP selection and placement with legend and BMP details for preliminary. Need a copy of the LDEQ stormwater permit letter with AIN prior to work order. Need a copy of the SWIP maintained on construction site for stormwater inspections. Please note Soap and Tallow Creek is a scenic river, and a scenic river permit may be required for the Creekstone Oaks project. Creekstone Oaks is adjacent to a site that was previously a shooting range, and potential impacts from pollutants from the shooting range should be taken into consideration when developing the subdivision.
Department of Environmental Services has no comment. Mr. Morone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Marone on behalf of the developer. We're in receipt of all of the staff's comments. I guess to begin with regards to the final comment about the shooting range, as this commission will remember, this was discussed in great detail before the commission at the zoning of the site, and again before the council, before the zoning was passed there. And the property that is being developed or proposed to develop now is not part of the old shooting ground. There is remediation that is ongoing on the shooting ground. There is also testing of all other areas to ensure there are no lead or any other problems in that area. That's paramount to the development, and all of that will be resolved and answered satisfactorily to the required state agencies before any work will actually commence out there. So I just wanted to reiterate again what you heard on those subjects during the zoning matter. In regards to the staff's, the planning staff's comments, we have no objection to any of those comments, and have either complied with them, or if compliance requires a step in the preliminary phase, we're prepared to do that. The only item that I would address would be the issue with regards to the active amenities. On the plan, we are proposing in Phase 2 a playground and a park area, leaving the vast majority or the lion's share of the active amenities in the large green space area that is set forth in Phase 4. And that was, again, that was part of the zoning and the plan that was established for the PUD at that time. So we would ask that we not be required to have active amenities in Phase 1. As we have discussed many times, one of the problems with having amenities in your very early phases is that you don't yet have the residents there to guard those items, and they are subject to vandalism and things of that nature. We believe that by the time Phase 2 is constructed, that there will be adequate residents there to have the park and the amenities that we're proposing at that area. And then, of course, the ball fields and the larger amenities will come in the extensive green space that is proposed for Phase 4. We believe that's reasonable. We hope that you would agree with us. With regards to engineering, most of their comments require certain items when we get to the preliminary stage. I've talked with our engineer about each of those items, and we have no objection or problem with any of the requirements that the engineering staff is making upon us. In regard to the traffic study, we just received the traffic study comments this morning. So obviously we have not had a lot of time to react to those. However, I did speak with the engineers today about those items, and we are prepared to make those changes, to get them back to Ms. Lala well before we appear before you for preliminary. So all of that will be resolved at that time. The bottom line with the study is that this project does not reduce the level of service on the roadways. I would note, as Ms. Lala noted to us in her comments, that the traffic circle at 1085 and 1077, which is an intersection of great importance, we know, is not only planned but is set to be let in the spring or early summer of 2013. So that is imminent, and we look forward to that. At this time, the traffic study does not indicate that turn lanes are needed based on what she has asked us to do. If in fact turn lanes or other improvements are needed, then we will obviously address those at that time. But at this point, the study does not suggest that is necessary. With that said, we would respectfully request your approval of the plan that's before you. The plan that you're seeing tonight is consistent with the PUD plan that was approved by the council, and all of those components are set forth on the tentative plan before you. So we would respectfully request your approval, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that any of the commissioners may have.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor? Opposition, please come forward. State your name and address, please.
John Martin, Goodby Civic Association, 12375 Ark Road, Covington. A couple of things with this. This particular property was turned down by zoning, and it was approved by the council with my understanding that the idea of approving it was that the shooting range be shut down and the lead cleaned up from the property. We've got a couple of problems with this as it's presented right here. The amenities, I think, are very important that they be done in Phase 1. We need to be able to test all of the land for lead, where these houses are going and where the shooting range was. The shooting range that's there now is not where it's always been, and there have been shooting activities throughout all of the properties. So Jeff Shane said that they wouldn't turn one spade of mud until they were sure that there was no lead. And I'm sure, hopefully, what he was talking about would be on all the properties, including where they're building now and the adjacent properties where the shooting range is now, that the whole thing be cleaned up of lead. The problem with not having any amenities is you put a house in, and so they maybe test for lead where that lot, and that lot's okay, there's no lead there. So they put a house on there, but they don't have any amenities, so the kids play someplace, and they're not necessarily going to stay on their lot. So they do need amenities where these kids can go and play, and we need to make sure that where they go and play is safe and is not lead. We know that New Orleans shut down all of their, great majority of their playgrounds and would not allow people to go on it until they cleaned the lead out, and that lead was just from the old leaded gasoline, the fumes. So they cleaned them up, and I think the idea of allowing 150 houses to go in there was to make sure that the lead is cleaned up. And that would be not only in this 116 acres, but the adjacent acres, unless you're going to do something to restrict kids from stepping off the 116 acres, which I'm not sure what you do. So I know there's remediation going on now for lead, but I think before anything is done, all the properties should be totally lead-free. And that way it's safe, because I know I certainly wouldn't want a kid to have problems because he ventured off of his lot. So that's the feeling that we have. We need to get the amenities in phase one. We need to clean the lead up, because that was the idea of approving these 150 homes, was to get rid of the lead. Thank y'all. Y'all have any questions on that? Anybody?
Can you fill out a speaker card for me so I can put your name in the minutes?
Can I what now?
Can you fill out a speaker card for me so I
Oh,
can
sure.
put your
I'm
name
sorry.
in the
I
minutes?
got here late. I
Thank
apologize.
you.
We don't know who you are, Doc.
I know who you are.
Anyone else wish
Thank
to
you.
speak in opposition? I'll go for rebuttal.
I'm sorry. We do have some of the gentlemen that lived here like forever, right across from the shooting range, that'll verify that they were shooting all over that property. I'll fill that out for you. Thank you.
Mr. Morone.
Thank you. Well, wonders never cease to exist. I think that Dr. Martin and I agree about something. And that is that we are not interested in there being lead on this property either. My client is proposing to develop the property. It is not the owner. It is not the operator of the shooting range. And I can certainly represent to this commission that we are intimately concerned about the lead, that we are requiring that we be completely satisfied before we take ownership of the property, before we turn a shovel of dirt on the property, that all of the property that we are engaged in developing is lead-free. And that is not just the home sites, that is the green space areas, that is all of the property that comprises this development. There has been a company that has been retained to go in and do an extensive study to make sure to answer these questions that I think everybody is concerned about. Dr. Martin and his group, my client, this commission, the future residents, and everybody. The testing will not be at random. It will be a detailed grid pattern throughout the entire property, so that from a selfish standpoint, my client, can be certain of what he's buying and what the ultimate residents will be buying into in this development. So there is no disagreement about that whatsoever. We are pursuing that with all zest. In regards to the amenities, the plan that is before you is the plan that was approved pursuant to the PUD. Other than the amenities that we're proposing, there simply is not significant land there to put further amenities in that area. We believe that having the amenities in Phase 2, which is a place to recreate, will be more than adequate. It is not uncommon to hold those amenities until Phase 2. Our Phase 1 is a relatively small phase, and we would suggest that what we are proposing is certainly reasonable under the circumstances. So again, we would request your approval of the plan that is before you. If and when we come back for preliminary, we will have the additional information that engineering has requested that we have at that time and planning. But at this point, we would ask that we are able to move through tentative to preliminary to the studies that are required. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martin?
Thank you. I just want to make sure we're speaking apple to apple. I'm not only talking about where the 150 houses are that's checked for lead, but because we know that there's potentially a toxic substance in the adjacent properties also, which is involved in this, that even where the shooting range is now, be certified that it's okay, that it's clear, that all the remediation's been done properly and that the lead is gone out of that, because these kids will get into surrounding areas, okay? They're not going to stay on their lot. So I want to make sure that we're all speaking of the same thing, and I'm not talking about just the place where 150 homes are going, but the rest of the shooting range that's not being developed right now, because there will be people going there.
Thank you. All right, that concludes the initial presentation and rebuttal. I'm going to close the floor and turn it over to the commission. I believe Mr. Mackey had his light on first.
Mr. Marone, I have 2 questions, that's all. One, I'm sure you probably can answer this. Do you have a map or a drawing or something where these ranges were and what direction they were shooting? Because, you know, it's not like a uniform distribution of lead.
That's correct, yes. And there are maps that I do not have with me, but that do indicate shooting locations historically and directions of those shots. And so those are areas of particular interest. But let me be clear, and we have been very clear in what we have told the current owner, that those maps, while helpful and give us a good place to start, are not determinative on where that study needs to begin and end. We want those areas looked at. We want them looked at carefully, but we don't know that there weren't shots fired in other directions, and so that's why we're requiring that the entire area be studied in a grid pattern. But we do have that type of data, yes.
Okay, thank you. The other one, where the shooting grounds are, is there going to be a fence around that to keep kids out or anything like that?
Well, as part of, I don't know whether there will be fencing there or not. That's something that we will be checking into. Certainly, part of the certificate that we that we are requiring for the property where the homes are going to be in the green spaces and so forth, there will have to also be a certification that the adjacent property does not present health concerns or health hazards. Now, can I tell you that every ounce of lead will have been reclaimed out of the remaining property that is not part of the PUD? I don't know that that's the case. We know that there is ongoing reclamation now, and it has been for some time, and it continues to go on. But as part of the certifications that we are going to require is just that one, the lands that we are occupying and using are free of lead or any other substance, and 2, that the residents here will be safe. And if that requires fencing or other matters, then that's certainly something that we intend to pursue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
Yes, Paul. So you are saying that the 69.69 acres excluded from the PUD, that's not what you're actually doing lead abatement of, correct? You're just doing the properties phase 1, 2, 3, and 4 that are owned by the developer?
There is lead abatement going on and continuing to go on the 69.69 acres.
Okay.
That is in fact going on, and that will continue. That is in the process.
Okay.
The areas where we are developing,
Right.
it is believed and represented to us that there is not lead there, or if there is not significant lead. However, that is where, in addition to the 69.69 acres, that we are having grid patterns done and testing done to determine if there is anything there, and if there is, then it will have to be removed.
And that information is gonna be sent to our department?
We'll be happy to share
Of
that
environmental?
information. We'll be happy to share that
I
information.
mean, obviously, that would be
Certainly.
mandatory. One question again on PUDs, we're so used to seeing all these different phases, but having a time schedule.
Mm-hmm.
What's the time schedule for phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3 and phase 4 on this? Because obviously, if you say phase 1, 1 year, and phase 2, 4 years, the amenities will make a difference.
Well, that's a good question, and
why I
you know,
asked
these timelines are never as hard or rigid as maybe we would like them to be. But I think that it is our intent that we would begin phase 1, hopefully in the late spring to summer of next year, pending the further approvals by this board, as well as the environmental approvals that we're talking about. At that time, I think once that is done, we would almost immediately move to phase 2. Within 6 months, we will be on phase 2. And then from there, moving into 3 in another 6 months. So we hope to and plan to move at 6-month intervals on each of the phases that you see before you.
And phase 2, you would include that Creekstone Way, the alternate route to go to 1077, correct?
Creekstone Way,
Where
yeah.
it goes back, right? I mean,
that is going to be, yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay, I see on phase 2 now, the little smaller park playground you have next to lot 58.
Yes.
How come that can't be done on the other side on lot 16 and 15 on phase 1?
Again, our concern about doing that at phase 1 would be that you would have that out there. I mean, in other words, when I come back for final for phase 1, you all are going to want to see that in place. And at final on phase 1, nobody's pulled a building permit yet, nobody's built a house yet. So we've got a delay of the time that it takes to do that before there is even one person that would be living out there. And what we have seen in other developments is that if you don't have residents out there, whatever you're building, whether it's playgrounds, whether it's any other type of amenities, they don't tend to last. There tends to be problems.
Again, but within the PUD design, a true PUD design, it clearly states that in the first phase, you should have amenities. I mean, a true PUD design.
Well,
If not, this would be like an A4 design and have no amenities, and we should have left it as an A4.
if that is one of the criteria for the PUD, I guess I would respectfully suggest that's bad criteria. History has told us that often does not work. So we would ask that the playground and the park be allowed to be in phase 2. We're talking about, if we're going to start within 6 months in phase 2, then you're talking about homes that will take, let's say, 4 months if the weather's good. So we'll be under construction in phase 2 in the best case scenario, and you'll only have the first people beginning to occupy phase 1. So by the time phase 1 is really occupied, phase 2 ought to be there and the amenities ought to be there.
Okay, so you're saying now, though, you're gonna have to wait for all 34 lots to be filled before you start phase 2, is that correct?
No,
Okay,
no, that's not what we're saying. We're planning on constructing phase 1, building and/or selling those lots, and then within about 6 months of the final, rolling into phase 2. So you're really going to have phase 2, most likely, the infrastructure for phase 2 under construction while you have homes in phase 1 being constructed.
okay, and I see this little area in phase 2, you have neighborhood park, what is that? Is that also gonna be a little amenity? It says neighborhood park just north in the wetlands, is that gonna be basically an amenity too, or?
Well, it'll be open
Open
space.
space?
It's
Okay.
open space,
All right,
yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I say a couple things based on the conversation here? First of all, regarding the amenities, they want to add an amenity. It doesn't necessarily have to be constructed with Phase 1 getting final approval and the plats recorded. That's part of the reason why we added the staff comment about the recreational development plan. That can be put in that plan as to when it has to be done, and it typically can be done when the first occupancy permit is issued. It has to be completed, or whenever you decide to do it. You'll get a chance to review that, once they submit that plan. Secondly, there is a possibility, I'm not sure if Paul and them looked at it, but I don't see any reason why I can't do a little wraparound of Phase 1 along the front of the highway there and just kind of wrap it and loop it around to tie into the playground on the back side of Phase 2 and just make that part of Phase 1 and develop the park and the playground there. That's an option. Because even if they decided and agreed that they would put a park and playground in Phase 1 without doing that, that is a change to the PUD, which is considered a major change, which would require them to go back through zoning, which I know they don't want to do. So that would be a suggestion I would think they should maybe look at.
Would you mention that one more time, Ron? I lost you for a second on
Are you
that.
talking about you could probably loop Phase 1 by making a strip along the highway where you have the 100-foot greenbelt buffer, and just run Phase 1 northward, and then curve it along the back of those lots to include the park and playground in Phase 1.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
what I'm talking about?
Reach out and pick that up.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, snatch it.
Okay. And my client's okay with that.
Okay, anything else, Ron? Okay, Mr. Matthews?
A couple of things, Paul. The Creekstone Way, it says in small print, construction and emergency access only. Is that going to be, after this is constructed, after Phase 4, I guess, is constructed, is that going to be blocked in some kind of way, that you will not have normal access for that?
No, it's not intending to be blocked.
Okay, so the construction and emergency access only that's written on here is in error?
I think I believe that denotes in the early phases. Is that correct? In the early phases, that it will be construction and emergency access. As we get into the later phases, it'll be, in other words, it may be gravel in the early phases, but when we get into the later phases, it would be fully improved, and then it would be fully utilized.
Staff, do we need to have something on the plat or something to show that? Because it appears from the plat that it's going to be emergency only.
Ron?
Well, that's exactly what it says. It's a construction, basically a construction entrance. If the idea is to make it a permanent roadway, then there should be some language on there to indicate that.
Okay, and we'll be happy to make that designation on the preliminary plat, so that that's clear.
Good. Will there be a mandatory homeowners association in this, that they'll be required to pay dues in order to maintain the active recreation area?
Yes,
It won't be a voluntary homeowners association?
it will not. It'll be mandatory.
Okay. The active recreation area that's proposed, are these going to be actual soccer fields with goals and a baseball diamond with a backstop and stuff like that? Or is this just going to be sandlot type stuff?
My impression was that it was going to be sandlot, but I'm looking to Mr. Meyer to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think our intention was to set it up, in a sandlot fashion where the areas are designated, but not necessarily, an infield and constructed as you might see in a recreational department field or something along those lines.
Backstops, goals for the soccer, or is it just going to be land?
No, I would expect that there would be goals for the soccer, and I would expect that there would be a backstop there. I guess where I was drawing the difference, I mean, we're not going to have a grass infield with a dirt running path and so forth. I mean, we won't get to that point. We won't get to that level of detail, but there will be goals, and there would be a backstop to designate where the baseball area would be.
In your recreational plan, I'd like to see that laid out so there'd be no mistake about what you're gonna do.
That's fine.
One other thing, the traffic study you say has been produced and has been comments from our engineers?
That's correct.
Okay. I'd like to see about getting a copy of that traffic study if I could. I'd like to just review the basis. I don't review the engineering behind it. That's far beyond me. But the basis is, some of that is common sense.
Sure, and we'll be making those revisions to get it in final form, and we hope to get that to engineering within the next 30 days, which would be well before we'd be in a position to even come back before you for preliminary.
And Ron's suggestion of wrapping this whole thing around to get to the playground, which will be, I guess, in the middle of the woods during phase one, I would much prefer to see you guys take the chance, because I think it's a small chance, and build a small playground or whatever it's gonna be over here behind lot 15 and 16. While, yeah, somebody could go in there and do something, I think the kids playing over here in the woods is a much greater risk.
And that's a good point. I guess what I would ask the commission is that with Mr. Keller's proposal, if we could have time to come back to you at preliminary and make a proposal, whether it's something along what Mr. Keller's proposing, something along what you're proposing, but give us a little bit of opportunity to weigh some of that and see if we can. I think it's clear, the message, which is that let's try to get something into phase one. If we could have a little bit of time to work on that to see what the best way to do that is. It might be what Mr. Keller said, but we'd like to have a chance to work on that a little bit to see if that's the case, and we can present something to you preliminary on that issue.
And Ron, that would be acceptable to do that at preliminary? Yes. Okay. And again, that'd be fine with me, but kids playing back there in the woods is not all that acceptable. I think that's gonna be a big risk for the developer. That's all I have.
Mr. Lloyd.
Paul, I just have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
There's been a lot of discussion about the lead in the ground and about the traffic impact and that sort of thing. But just looking at the staff analysis report, there's almost 2 pages of very detailed thou shalts, with the exception of the traffic impact analysis that's going to come back for further review, and the playground or the activity area that you all are going to work on. Do you have any problem with making a commitment to doing all the rest of those things?
No.
Okay.
Any further discussion from the commission? We need a motion and a second to approve. Mr. Matthews?
Motion to approve the tentative. Can we do that with the caveats that we've discussed?
Yes, subject to staff comments and the additional items, yes.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. All right, thank you. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, preliminary subdivision review, SD 12-06-003P, is in Paul, Plache Estates, Ward 3, District 3. Developer owner is 110 Capital Pool 2 LLC, engineers Kelly McHugh and Associates, Parish Council District Representatives Honorable Red Thompson. This was tabled at the September 11th meeting. Staff?
The preliminary plan and hydrologic study have been reviewed by this office, and inspections made of the site. It is recommended that preliminary submittal be approved subject to the following. Since the cut and fill calculations only provide a fill allowance for each lot, not to mitigate the entire lot, a note on the plat should state the allowed fill for each lot. A fill plan will be required for review prior to each lot being filled. The current fill allowance proposed may result in some houses being raised on the lowest lots. The estimated fill note on the plat should be replaced with allowed fill. No net fill calculation should consider roadside culverts to be at least 20 feet long, as this length is the minimum allowed for residential driveways per ordinance 499. The note on the plat should be revised to prohibit subsurface drainage, not state that it must be approved by the Department of Engineering, as the ditch is being used for fill mitigation. A setback of 20 feet from top of bank for all permanent structures, including but not limited to buildings and fences, is required for lots on the northern boundary containing the swell ditch. I'm leaving this comment in because I haven't been able to verify it's been taken care of, even though the letter said it was. Sewer manholes must not be installed within drainage ditches. A work order will not be issued until detailed plans have been submitted and approved for the off-site improvements on MP Planch Road near Highway 25, and for the proposed turn lane on Highway 25, a LA DOTD permit will be required for the turn lane. The revised hydrologic study must include culvert calculations for the drainage review to be completed since the site layout has changed. Additional comments may follow after this information is submitted.
Paul, turn that mic on.
Must have gotten bumped off, sorry. Funded maintenance obligation in the amount of $10,000 is required in accordance with subdivision 499, section 406108. Funded letters of credit for existing parish roads to ensure the repair of any damage to the parish roads resulting from construction activity in connection with the subdivision. Mandatory developmental fees will be required at final submittal in accordance with ordinance 499, since no public hearing was held prior to January 1st, 2005. Department of Environmental Services has comments.
Plans and specifications for the construction of the project's water distribution lines and sewer collection lines have not yet been approved by the Department of Health and Hospitals as required. No work order will be issued until the submitted plans and specifications are approved by the DHH.
Thank you. Yes, sir. State your name.
Good evening, Andrew Mendheim here on behalf of the developer 110 Capital Pool 2. Certainly, I'm no engineer, and so specifics as it relates to some of these engineering concerns, I'm clearly not the best person to answer those questions. But Mr. McHugh of Kelly McHugh and Associates is present and is willing and able to answer any of those specific questions you may have. Generally speaking, I know that in conjunction with our engineer, and 110 Capital has consistently worked diligently toward complying with all of the parish ordinances and staff's comments, et cetera. We are in receipt of that staff, November 7th staff analysis report, which listed those items. We have no objections to those items, and my understanding is that they've been addressed, and we are now in compliance with those items, or are working toward compliance with all of those items. Again, if you have any general questions, I'd be glad to answer those for you. Any of the specific engineering questions, I would direct those to Mr. McHugh. And if there are no questions, we'd respectfully request approval of the preliminary.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have questions? Mr. Mackey.
Yeah. I'd hate to
One for you, sir.
break up the party, but the only comment I have is, first of all, I have to apologize. We had some illness at the office, but we did respond to the letter. Majority of the comments have been addressed. I know your staff will have time to go through them very quickly. TIA has been done. Hydrologic study was sent before. Parish couldn't find the copy. We sent it again. DOTD had already been done one time. This was a permit that we were doing with another subdivision up there. So DOTD has already seen the plans for the turning lane, so we're just going to have to revise those. The only item I have is that if you look at your plat, the 20-foot, there's a drainage For the northern part of this subdivision, there's one row of lots between Planch Road and our northern boundary of the subdivision that are acre-sized lots. And most of that water, half of that water drains to the front ditch. Some of it may drain to the back. So we have placed a private servitude on the north boundary of those lots to take care of just those acre-sized lots. And we're trying to make that a private servitude and not a public servitude, because if a public servitude, then it'd have to be 50 feet wide. And, you know, it's just not that much water, because the parish is now requiring you have to have 20 feet open from the top of both ditches. So if the ditch is 4 feet, you got 44 feet for, it's just not practical. So we're requesting that be a private servitude. So that was the only change that we have, a request that we have.
Okay.
Just to clarify my comment there, the council passed an ordinance a while back requiring no construction of any nature within 20 feet of an open ditch in a subdivision, in any new subdivisions as of the date when the ordinance was passed. So what my comment said was, since they're putting in a small rear ditch in the back, they would have to create a 20-foot setback off of the top bank of the ditch, and also not have any fences or any other types of construction in that 20 feet, in addition to the width of the ditch.
You got that?
And
Yeah,
that's
but
whether it's private or public servitudes.
But the ditch has two sides. So then that's 20 feet, and you got the width of the ditch. The parish minimum is already 35, so that's 44 feet wide for about a 5-foot ditch. And so that's why we put it in a private servitude. It'll be maintained by the homeowners association, and it'll be servitude, it just won't be for public. The parish won't have to maintain the ditch. That's what the parish wants, 20 feet on both sides of the ditch to try to maintain it. In the past, it was 5 feet on one side and 15 feet on the other side. That was the parish ordinance for ditches. But that way you had 15 feet to get your equipment in to maintain the ditch. A couple years ago, they changed that and made it 20 feet on both sides. And it doesn't sound like much, but that's tremendous ramifications when people are gonna wanna start, try to properly drain, and you're putting roadways through to get it. You're gonna have all kind of things, unintended consequences. It's a little overkill, and that you're gonna have all kind of things, people trying to get around this. It's just not that's not just a good instance to have 40, open clear, 40 feet for these small swales. So,
Let me just clarify a little bit of a misunderstanding. As a private servitude, you can put the well ditch as close to the property line as you want.
yeah, that's what we wanna do.
And the 20 feet of setback and no construction will apply from the top of bank on the interior side of the lot, 20 feet out. So it'd be 20 feet plus width plus whatever distance, if any, you give from there. And it does not modify the parish cross-section required. The intent was, there's been a few places where ditches, usually large ditches, have eroded near foundations, and it's created foundation issues for a few houses, and that's what led to the ordinance.
Yeah.
It wasn't an intent to modify the parish cross-section.
I understand that exactly, and I know there are a lot of places that the parish did not leave enough right-of-way for big ditches. And I think that's good. I mean, that's all great. But I'm talking about a small swale to drain the back half of a lot. That's just a little overkill, and that's why we do it private, that's all. And I agree with your comments, Paul. I wish there were a lot more ditches places I knew that people didn't have fences in the way, and we had to be able to get access. But I'm talking about significant ditches.
Sure, yeah, my comments are bound by parish ordinance, so.
Paul, considering some of these changes, I couldn't determine, maybe Mr. McHugh can tell me, the outlet structure, of course, is a flow outlet, and where does that go?
There is a
Ditch
large
to Chifunk.
existing ditch on the west side of this property that goes all the way from Planch Road all the way down to Chifunk River. If you looked on a quad map, it goes for about a mile that's straight. That's a large existing ditch. It's taken up like 40 feet of this property.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, I'll compliment the vicinity map that you have on this drawing. That's much better than we normally get for trying to locate some of these places we're not quite as familiar with. Paul, are you pretty settled, since this is when we really got to discuss hydrology. Excuse me. Are you pretty happy with, since we got some of these variations and stuff like that, everything look clean there?
On hydrology study, like I said, it's not fully reviewed yet, the revision I got at 1 PM. I'm gonna have to have a little bit of discussion with their engineer on some of it. They show plastic pipe as the outfall of the pond. They modeled it as concrete pipe, which makes a little bit of a difference. They show a mitered culvert surrounded by earth, and they used a head wall on the inlet side of the outfall pipe of the pond. There's a few little things here and there in the hydro study I just need to, get them to address and clean up.
Okay. That's it for me.
Matthews.
Paul, you haven't yet totally reviewed the hydrology study. If we approve this tonight, will we have another chance to deal with any deficiencies in the hydrology study?
They don't get a permit.
Until the staff, until we're satisfied in engineering that the hydrology study is done correctly, we won't approve and give a work order.
They won't give them work order.
One more question for you, Paul. The private ditch will not, or the private servitude will not require a 20-foot right-of-way?
Let me clarify, it's not a matter of a right-of-way, it's by parish ordinance, and this was, I believe it was passed in 2010. I may be wrong on that, but the parish council passed an ordinance a while back stating that if there is a open ditch that's not on a roadside, that there's a parish setback required that's 20 feet from top of bank of either side of that ditch. Now, being and that it doesn't comment on whether it's a private or publicly maintained ditch.
Such private, public
Is irrelevant to this.
is irrelevant.
Now, since this is private, they can push this proposed ditch as close to the property line as they dare to do. And then whatever width the ditch is, plus 20 feet, plus whatever room, if any, on the other side of the ditch is what's going to determine their setback.
And there's no fences or anything can be put on
No
there?
fences, no buildings, no sheds, no permanent construction of any nature, basically.
So those lots will in effect have the rear 20 feet be
They can walk on it.
no construction on it at all?
Yeah, they can walk on it, they can use temporary storage, but nothing, no permanent structures. No
Mr. McHugh,
fences.
is that you understand that, and that's,
Yeah, that's my understanding. And I think that it 20 feet from the top of this ditch, and you got a 25-foot rear setback at this point, so it's probably gonna fit that ordinance anyway.
okay?
Mr. Willie?
Kelly, you saying there's not gonna be much water going into this private servitude, but who's gonna maintain?
The homeowners will end
The
up
homeowners
maintaining,
be
yeah.
responsible for maintaining,
Yes.
keeping it open and clear.
Yeah.
And also, you mentioned, most of the water from this thing is gonna go south to the pond area?
Yeah, the
But
entire
you
thing will
mentioned
go
something about a ditch going to the river. That's what,
well, unfortunately, can't see it on the vicinity map, but if you look on the plat, on the western boundary, you see that big strip of land?
right.
That's a very large ditch that would, I guess the parish dug years and years ago. That thing proceeds straight south for another mile, and
Okay.
it's into the
And the
headwaters
pond
of the
empties
Tchefuncte.
into that ditch as well?
The pond goes into that ditch. All the water from the subdivision goes into the pond and then into the ditch.
And the
And you
pond
can
is-
see how much land we left open for that ditch.
Right, so the pond is roughly 4 acres, you saying?
That's right.
Okay.
And let me say this, that the revision to this plat was because we changed the layout to increase the size of the pond. So suffice to say, I can say that the things that Paul are talking about are very, very minute when it comes to the calculation. The pond is, sizable. It's a 4-acre pond for 30-something acres, so think about that.
Okay,
Is the ditch or whatever that's carrying this to the Tchefuncte River, does it have the capability to carry this extra load? Water?
Yeah, well, ours is designed to hold the water back, so ours is gonna be going into it a little bit less. Okay, you're talking about from our runoff?
Yeah, your runoff going into the parish, ditch or canal, what you want to call it.
Kelly,
It's pretty
didn't
sizable. I mean,
didn't
you
they
can look at the
redo-
sections on it.
connected to Rudy's
Mr. Casbah?
property right there? Didn't we put in the book, there was they reworked that for a road. It's a huge, underneath 25, right there on the edge by the Ramsey Grocery. It comes off that square. Did they have,
Well, that's a little bit farther,
it's
farther
farther
up,
down?
Martha, yeah.
Okay.
That was
But I'm
for-
saying, by the time it gets there and it goes in, it goes. to
That's right. On the
Chiffon.
northern side of this was that
It's
called
on that side,
River Park
right.
Estates, and
Right.
that touched the grocery store.
Okay.
Yeah. But that area all, I think, kind of eventually gets over to
Eventually,
this
that's what I'm
large
saying,
ditch,
it
yeah.
slows it down
Yeah.
to get it through and stuff.
Yeah.
On that. I have a question. I have see if I understand what you said about the traffic. That's one of my main concerns, is that it would need that turning lane because it's right it's in that area of the River Road and stuff. Did you say you had it, or?
Yes.
You had,
This subdivision, Planche Estates, and River Park Estates adjacent to each other. At one
Right.
time, they were both going to use Planche
That's what I
Estates.
thought, yeah.
When we got River Park Estates approved, we got the TOTD permit to the turning lane. It needed a turning lane.
Yeah.
Our traffic study indicated it, and that was approved. Then Planche Estates moved those up a little bit north, got it approved there, and didn't build the subdivision at all. So now we're back down to Planche Road.
Launch Road, okay,
I assume the answers from DOT are still going to be the same,
okay.
so.
But there wouldn't be a work order until we do
There won't be a
get
work
that.
order till the DOTD's got it, that's right.
All right. No one has any other questions. I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve, and Martha, I'm gonna ask that, that include, the approval of Department of Engineering's review.
Correct. Any of the department's statements.
Okay. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
SD 12-08-004P, Garden Walk, Ward 3, District 5, developer owner Citadel Builders, engineers Kelly McHugh and Associates, Parish Council District Representative Honorable Marty Gould. This was tabled at the October 9th meeting, and the developer is still requesting that this be tabled.
That's correct.
All right, I will accept a motion to postpone until the December meeting.
Motion to postpone.
Motion to postpone by Mr. Matthews, seconded by Mr. Manella. Please vote. Motion carries. SD 05-08-020, P as in Paul 2, Weston Glen Phase 2, Ward 1, District 1, developer owner Varuso Homes LLC, engineers Richard C. Lambert Consultants LLC, Parish Council District Honorable Marty Dean. Staff?
The preliminary plan and hydrologic study have been reviewed by this office, inspections made of the site. It is recommended that the preliminary submittal be approved subject to the following. Subdivision plat needs to be revised as follows. Show Phase 2 footprint labeled Phase 2. Show Director of Engineering, not Parish Engineer. Show current owner's name. Correct legal description to cover Phase 2 only. Show revision date or new title block if different surveyors to be used. Surveyor to check notes and make sure they conform to current requirements. Correct tabulation on top of the plat to include Phase 2 only. Restrictive covenant number 6 must state, for lots that are located in a special flood hazard area, the proposed minimum elevation of the first floor shall be determined by the 2008 revised preliminary D firm or most current available base flood requirement, or 12-inch minimum above the crown of the adjacent roadway, whichever is higher. For lots not located in a special flood hazard area, the first floor elevation shall be a minimum of 12 inches above the crown of the adjacent roadway. Master drainage and grading plan needs to be revised as follows. Show Phase 2 and title block, delineate the Phase 2 footprint with bold lines, show a typical road cross-section, furnish revised signage plan, erosion control plan adequate as submitted, need AIN and/or stormwater permit letter from LDEQ, funded maintenance obligation in the amount of $15,000 is required in accordance with subdivision 499, section 406108. Funded letters of credit for existing parish roadways to ensure the repair of any damages to parish roads resulting from construction activity in connection with the subdivision. No mandatory developmental fee is required at final submittal in accordance with ordinance 499 since a public hearing was held prior to January 1st, 2005. Department of Environmental Services Planning have no comments.
Thank you. Mr. Morone.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Paul Morone on behalf of Mr. Varuso and Varuso Homes LLC. Our engineer and the developer have reviewed all of the staff comments, and we have no objection to any of those comments. By way of background, the Commission may remember that this case came before you for zoning. I believe it was last month, but certainly in the last 2 months. But in fact, this project, as is before you tonight, was approved back in 2005. The first phase was built. Nothing happened with the back phases. It was zoned to MD1. You all chose to zone it back to what was originally approved, which is the same site plan. We have had our engineer work with the engineering staff to make sure that any changes that have taken place since that time in '05 when it was approved preliminarily have been addressed. Those items have now been addressed, I'm told, and we would respectfully request your approval, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that the commissioners may have.
Thank you. Commissioners, you have questions? Ms. Casabon, lights on. Okay. Mr. Davis.
Yes, Paul, I really like that triangle park design. You know, that's one of the, I think that's just, has a little imagination in that, you know? I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Mr. Davis, second by Mr. Matthews. Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Final subdivision review, SD 06-07-021, F as in Frank, 6-3, Money Hill Phase 6, Part 3, Ward 6, District 6. Developer owner, Money Hill Plantations LLC. Engineer is Aero Engineering and Consulting. Parish Council Districts, Honorable Richard Tanner. Staff?
The final inspection was made on October 15, 2012. The inspection disclosed that the roadway was constructed in 2007 when Phase 6 received final approval. However, this portion of the subdivision was not within Phase 6. The developers revised drawings to include an alley between the lots in this phase. We have no objection to this revision. The developer requests a $60,000 performance obligation be established for the construction of the alley. We have no objection to the establishment of this performance obligation. Following uncompleted items exist at the final inspection. Show direction arrows for drainage flow within the alley. An appropriate traffic signage plan needs to be furnished for the roadway and alley. Should the Planning Commission approve the request for final approval, a performance obligation will be required for the alley in the amount of $60,000. No warranty obligation is required for the roadway since it was constructed in 2007 and is currently in excellent condition. The staff recommends approval of the proposed final subdivision request subject to the developer complying with all comments. No plats be signed until all items are satisfactorily completed. Mandatory developmental fees are as follows. Road impact fee, $19,084. Drainage impact fee, $20,917. Department of Environmental Services Planning has no comments.
Thank you. Commissioners? Mr. Mackey.
I visited the site today and all, it looks good. I make a motion to approve.
A second.
Motion approved, seconded by
Richard.
Todd. You second? All right. Any comments, questions? Please vote. Motion carries. Proposed amendments to ordinance 499, I don't see any. Old business, anyone have any old business to discuss? New business? Motion to adjourn, thank you.